Hello, everypony, and welcome to episode 6 of the Brony Bookclub. This week we have on Uber Phoenix, the author of A World Without Rainbows. And as usual, my co-host, Sam.
Yep.
Alright, this week our theme is adventure, and we are going to be talking about some awesome stuff. First off, we're going to interview our guest, as usual, by asking some questions. So first off, what tag do you see on a fanfic that really makes you want to read it?
I don't think there's any one tag that would really grab me that would really guarantee that I'm going to sit down and read it. I like adventure stories, but it's not a necessity. I'd probably say the best tags for that might be sad or dark, because I'm kind of a cruel person. I really like the opportunity to take what is usually a happy, upbeat universe and really put that happiness and upbeatness in context and really contextualize it.
What tag will you see that on a fic that will pretty much guarantee you won't read it? What is your least favorite tag?
Okay, there is the one tag that's pretty much going to guarantee I'm not even going to give it a chance is humans, because I see no good reason for that tag to exist. We've built an entire universe. We should use that universe. We don't need to taint it by dragging humans into it and just invading it with humans, unless the humans are literally invading, because I think that would actually be pretty awesome, and I would read that. But
Yeah.
Other than that, I think it's unnecessary, and it really has no right to be in a fic.
I can respect that. I
get that.
I don't agree, but I respect. How did you get the idea for A World Without Rainbows?
Well, the origins of the story, it actually started on the Equestria Daily discussion threads for the Cutie Bar Chronicles episode, and it's actually still there if you go and you look at it. I was part of a conversation with a bunch of other people that were discussing all the questions that the episode raised and the possibility of the alternate universe where the events of the episode didn't happen or didn't happen the same way, and how that would affect the characters as they were in the present.
And that became the fanfic.
Yes. And there were some ideas that were suggested by other people that ended up being incorporated into the fic itself, such as the idea that Pinky was essentially forced into an arranged marriage and had a daughter. I did not come up with that. Someone else did anonymously. They weren't logged in, which was unfortunate, so I kind of stole their idea. I didn't give them credit.
This person, if you're listening, please post or comment and tell us who you are. You can get your just reward.
But around that time, I'm an aspiring writer, but one of the biggest issues I was facing is I couldn't really write anything of significant length because I was too easily discouraged. So I had this idea that if I could write something serialized, something I could write and upload a chapter at a time, I could receive feedback, and that feedback would really encourage me to do more as a writer and build on it more. And in order to do that, I decided I would have to be writing something that I didn't care about making it perfect. I didn't care about giving it 100%. And that has since changed. I now do care about giving the story 100%, but that's one of the reasons I chose, you know what, I'm going to do fan fiction, because fan fiction isn't necessarily professional, so I shouldn't approach it with a professional attitude.
Okay.
Makes sense.
What's your favorite aspect of A World Without Rainbows?
Okay, really my favorite parts of the story are any part that really lets me analyze the characters and the relationships between the characters. So, for example, the flashback chapter with Gilda. That whole chapter was probably one of my favorite chapters to write, because I was really able to explore the dynamic between Gilda and Rainbow Dash and how I saw Gilda and how I thought that her mind works and how she would behave in these other scenarios. And similarly, a lot of the scenes with Rarity and the alternate Applejack. Those were a lot of fun to develop, including the one that's going to be in the next chapter. The next chapter is almost entirely done. I wanted to upload it before the interview, but I didn't get a chance. So, but I had a lot of fun with some of the scenes in that, so you're gonna... That's
so far, Madame Orange and Rarity, I think their conversations are always great, especially that last one.
Oh, yeah.
Like, the whole, God, Rarity was just so awesome in it. And I was just like, yes, tell her off.
There's more awesomeness to come. Actually, I was thinking about sending the two of you the preview of it, or what I had so far.
Oh, no, I don't want special treatment. I want to read it with everyone else.
All right, get to read it with everyone else. It'll be up in a couple days.
Oh, okay, cool.
Awesome.
What advice do you have for any pony listening who really wants to write fan fiction but isn't sure how to start?
Okay, my first piece of advice would be, even if you aren't certain of your own abilities, try anyway. Go for it. Don't worry about making everything perfect, because if you do that, you're going to be there forever. You're never going to be satisfied with your own work. So do the best you can, but if you're too stressed out, if you're looking at the same piece of text over and over again, ask someone else for advice, and then make it as good as you can, and then just send it out there. And my other piece of advice would definitely be accept constructive criticism.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Realize that there are going to be things that other people will see that you can't see because of your involvement in the story, and that it's important to listen to what people have to say, because people giving criticism are there to help.
Yeah. I've definitely ran into that. That is always a very true thing.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm going to quickly just say thank you, Psychic Scuba Diver, from the second episode. With my own story I've been writing, his criticism has helped me a lot. Who are your favorite professional authors, and do you think they affected your writing, and if so, how?
All right. Professionally, I'm a fan of Douglas Adams. I'm sure that name gets mentioned a lot here, but it's kind of a requirement that we have to mention him.
Of course.
And I think that there's a couple of authors and writers that I really aspire to. I try to channel them and emulate them a little bit when I can. And Douglas Adams is one of them. The other two, they don't write books, they don't write literature. Stephen Moffat. Am I allowed to mention?
Yes, Stephen Moffat.
The current head writer of Doctor Who.
Okay.
He is... I use him as inspiration for stories, not necessarily the writing style, but putting together plots. Him along with Andrew Hussey, the author of the webcomic Homestuck.
Another freaking Homestuck fan.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
There are tons of them. I think I've been pressured into starting reading that soon. So
it gets really... The plot is incredibly convoluted, but if you're into that sort of thing, it's...
I'm already a fan of a giant convoluted webcomic. I think I can take another.
Yeah.
All right. So next we will discuss the week's theme. We're going to talk about Adventure Fix.
Woohoo.
I think it's actually really interesting that's become a genre. I think Lauren Foss would be very proud.
Oh, yes.
Because some people, some bronies, I think most bronies know that one of her favorite things to do in the show that she sadly wasn't able to do as much as she wanted was she loved the adventure plot lines like Dragon Shy or season openers and enders, stuff like that. Those were her favorites to do. And she didn't get it, the Hub and Hasbro did not allow her to have as many as she wanted. But I think she'd be glad that we've taken that for her. And we're like, yes, all of the adventures. Star Swirl the Bearded.
Yeah.
I keep seeing that one updating, and I'm always like, what? Lord of the Rings? Is that a fic now?
Wait, really?
I'll
have to check that out.
But it's like a Lord of the Rings kind of thing, and it's about Star Swirl the Bearded.
That's pretty awesome.
And I'm like, that sounds pretty cool. Yeah, but I think that adventures can be amazing, but they can also run the risk. I think actually last week, I believe it was last week or the week before, we had someone on who said the thing that they didn't like was when people have planned out this epic journey in their head and focus so much on that 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 the beginning stuff isn't enough to hook anyone in. And I do think that's the problem with some adventures. Obviously not A World Without Rainbows, because you start reading and go, what is going on?
Yeah, seriously.
Thank you.
But, yeah, that I think is the toughest thing about adventures, is making them interesting and making sense, but also, and having it planned out, but not plan it out so much that I think there's almost a level of planning when you plan something that you stop considering individual stuff. Like, you just see it as this one big whole that you can't cut anything out of, and you tie everything together, and that can really not work.
It's tough to avoid, too. Once you get a grand vision of everything, yeah, you really want to stick to it and such, even if it's not the best for it.
I think I've risked falling into that pitfall a lot.
Mm.
And because, I do have this really big plan of what's going to happen, what needs to happen, and when it needs to happen for the whole story to make sense. But I need to be careful to also focus on the smaller scales and giving time for smaller plot developments and character developments so that the reader doesn't have to look at the whole thing before it starts to make an ounce of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, talking about adventure, next we switch up to, specifically talking about World Without Rainbows. Ask you stuff about that. I think I mentioned in, actually the first episode, I was dreading reading that. Like, I had to read it because I was doing dark fic for the first episode, and so I was like, ugh, I don't like, because I'm not a big dark fic guy, and I don't like seeing that happen to my characters. So I was like, okay, I'm just going with the most popular one, A World Without Rainbows. And so I started it, and I went, man, they lied to me. Because I do think it is dark. Like, specifically, like you mentioned earlier, the Gilda Rainbow Dash flashback chapter, oh my god, is that dark. A lot of stuff that happens with Rarity when they're fighting Gilda, that's really dark.
Yeah, I had noticed a few comments after, I think it was chapter 4, when Otherworld Fluttershy was revealed. Some people saying that it should be grimdark instead.
That's the darkest thing. Otherworld Fluttershy is so freaking dark.
Well, until a recent plot twist was interesting.
Yeah. But besides that, I think really besides that, it doesn't feel that dark to me. It feels like it has moments of darkness, but they all feel organic. They all feel like, yes, that is what's happening here. This is serious, but it also has Pinkie Pie moments, and it also has the same heartwarming and awesomeness that the show itself has. So that's my problem with a lot of dark fics, is that for some reason or another, it doesn't feel like the show. It feels like this completely other thing with the same characters. And that's where you succeed the best. That and the amazing Quantum Leap style premise.
Yeah. No, I'd have to agree, actually. That's one of my favorite things about it as well. I think I've mentioned before that I like the idea of dark fics, and that there's obviously more to explore within the world of Equestria that's darker than what the show chooses to do or can do, for that matter. And exploring that can be a good thing. But it's hard to make it actually feel like it has a place. And this fic, I thought, did a very good job of that. It seemed to lead pretty naturally into it, and it makes sense in the world instead of just being random bad things happening for the sake of it. I really enjoyed the way that it was worked into it all.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you guys both put that. That was really well put, really well expressed. And that's exactly it. The story needs to feel like it belongs in the setting. Because you stretch suspension of disbelief too far. You make it dark for the sake of being dark, and the audience is going to lose the interest that they had, because they're not reading this for the darkness. They're reading this because it's in a setting that's familiar to them, with characters that are familiar to them, and you start to stretch that, and they're going to lose their interest.
Yes.
Yeah. Alright, so next we talk about what is updated, which is actually kind of a wealth of things because it's in another 2-week break. I don't want that to be the thing. I do want to update every week, but we just have technical problems. 2 weeks in a row, oddly enough. So I'll start off. I got a little bit. First of all, there was this one thing that updated, 3 or 4 times in these 2 weeks? Oh yeah, A World Without Rainbows.
Seriously.
I know.
Well, that's to make up for the fact that it's been like a month and a half of no updates.
I don't like to think about that.
And there's a reason behind it.
Oh.
after like the last update, before that whole month and a half hiatus, is I came up with a plan for exactly what was going to happen in the next chapter. And I started writing it, and it kind of ran a little bit long. The chapter is usually around 5,000 words. This one, I was 20,000 words in, and the chapter wasn't done yet. And I began to realize that there was a problem, because this was taking up much more room than I thought it was going to. So I split it up.
Oh, okay, can I just say what you just did? You just pulled a George R.R. Martin on us. He did the exact same thing with the fourth book. Oh my, this book I've written seems to be over 2,000 pages. I'll just split it into two smaller books.
I'm going to look like a fool for asking this. Who's George R.R. Martin?
He's the author of A Song of Ice and Fire / The Game of Thrones. Well, the TV show is called The Game of Thrones, but the books are A Song of Ice and Fire. I just got into it less than a year ago, actually, and now I'm like the biggest fan. It is incredible. I'm waiting out there. I'm like, the show's getting popular. Someone needs to do a crossover. Come on. I want Game of Ponies. Let's do it.
Yeah. Interestingly enough, Nick, in all seriousness, this, I mean, I mentioned on the show before that this being on this show has in many ways been the start of my getting back into fan fiction in the first place. And of all the ones that I've read since I've started co-hosting on here that are ongoing, yours is the only one that's updated since I caught up. The only one. And I only read it like 2 weeks ago. I mean, so thanks for being good about that.
Yeah.
I try.
So, besides your fic, there's actually two others that have. First off, we talked about before, The Dresden Fillies by Psychic Scuba Diver updated from the second episode.
To read that sequel. Yes.
False Masks actually updated, and it was crazy because it was one of those fics now. That and Swee's Mansion, I was been looking at, like, it's been months. Come on, we need an update. And occasionally I'd see him on Skype and be like, hey, so where's that update? And he's just, I'm working on it. It was worth it. It was awesome. It had Dresden being pretty much interrogated by the Cutie Mark Crusaders.
Oh, gosh.
And that is the most hilarious thing. And then, I don't know if you could technically call it an update. I am going to. But the very amazing, I haven't talked about it, I don't think at all on here, Thrown Abroad. That fic is really great. And it, quote-unquote, updated with the next story. Because it finished, and now we have the sequel, which is My Little Changeling, Friendship is Weird. By Nyaruzu. Person who writes this. I don't know. But yeah, both are great. Sam obviously is like, what is this? It's basically a changeling gets blamed by Chrysalis for the whole failure of the season 2 ender. And he's so even though he's just a royal guard, so he gets literally thrown out of the hive and lands in the Everfree Forest.
I think I've heard of this, actually.
And so what he did is he didn't have enough energy left over to disguise himself. So he went into Ponyville with like a cloak and sunglasses on. And like trying to somehow get some love so he could actually disguise. And he told everyone it was this pony named Suncloak. And it's basically about him actually becoming a member of Ponyville. And that's what the sequel is all about. Is him actually doing friendship reports to other changelings. It's very interesting. My favorite part is just how it's all in first person, and they give Suncloak, because that's the only name he ever gets. Him and other changelings, the thought process is so interesting, and they obviously, Nyaruzu put so much thought into it, onto how a changeling's mind would work, and I really want to say this guy is awesome for that. He actually really thought about something I don't think the rest of us did. So,
yeah, that sounds like a great idea.
Oh yeah, it's awesome. So, Uber Phoenix, did anything you read update?
I've actually been kind of busy these past couple weeks, so I don't know if they've updated. Because there are some stories I've been reading that I'm actually not yet completely caught up on. So they could have updated, I wouldn't even notice.
That's understandable.
So, yeah. So,
all right.
Instead of talking about something that updated, I might as well just throw out a plug to the story Background Pony.
People keep mentioning it. I'm never going to read it, I swear.
I'm bringing it up in a tab right now. Yeah, I will read it later.
you should. It's I was reminded of it when you're talking about the thought process, because again, the whole thing is written in first person from the perspective of Lyra, who in the story is cursed, so that no one can remember her. And like she'll have a conversation with someone, and the moment it's done, they'll forget it ever happened, and she's the only one who can remember.
I just have to say something that I've been thinking of ever since my co-host here showed it to me. That is much now. I'm being reminded from Background Pony, Fuku-chan. That is what it is. It's an entire fic from Fuku-chan's perspective. I hope you're happy now.
Oh,
I'm not
boy.
reading it. Nothing that sad can ever. I'm not doing it.
No, you brought Colonnade into it. I'm definitely reading it now.
All right. So now we're going to talk about older stuff. More classic suggestions of adventure. Again, I'll start off. First off, I saw it and I had to bookmark it. Countdown to Destruction by Cyron757. A crossover between My Little Pony and Majora's Mask.
Really?
Yes! It basically, Trixie is broke. Basically, after her episode, she tried going to other places, and she just failed. Like, she just had a bad streak of performances. Now she could barely afford food. And all she can think about is Twilight Sparkle, about how she wants revenge, how this pony has ruined her life. And all of a sudden a voice calls out to her saying, oh, she can get her revenge. She just has to find this mask. And the first chapter is just her going through this epic journey to find it. And then from there, shit hits the fan when she finally gets to Ponyville. And it's very interesting. The author is not making this the way. If I was going to do a crossover with this, I try to find a way to put the Song of Time into it somehow, or or the whole. We don't know yet, but I don't think they're going to do the whole how every pony's lives were each the little subplots that game was filled with. I don't think they're gonna do that, which I'm kind of sad about. That's one of my favorite parts of Majora's Mask. But it is looking great. It is a really good adventure fic. Definitely give props to Cyron. And then the other one I have is there isn't an official name for it yet. I guess I would call them the Blue Blood trilogy, which is Teacher with No Class, The Strange Destiny of Prince Blueblood, and The Prince of Ponyville. Only the last two are adventure, but whatever. By Kavande, who's now one of my favorite fic authors, who I'm going to get him on here one day, I swear it. Because Blue Blood is now best pony for me because of these fics. Well, these fics and The Best Night Ever, which I talked about before. But it's really, really well done adventure. In A Teacher of No Class, the whole idea is he is the Miss Cheerley's class needs to have a lecture about government. So who are they going to get? So they send for someone, and they give Prince Blueblood is the lecturer. And immediately, everyone except Diamond Tiara and Silver Spoon are like questioning him and making fun of him, and he's kind of a dick back to them. And then they basically hit the wrong nerve, several bad nerves on him at the same time, and he basically kind of just collapses and starts crying about he's like, yes, I understand it. I am worthless. I am the worst pony to ever be born. I understand this. Ugh, why don't I just die? Like, he just loses it. And then they're just like, well, you're not that bad. And that one ends with him going out into the Everfree Forest. And that's where the second one, and since then, it's this huge adventure of him trying to find his place in the world. And it's really great. Very well written, a lot of good universe building. The final showdown, quote unquote, in The Strange Destiny of Prince Blueblood is one of my favorites examples ever of talking the monster to death. It was brilliant.
That's always fun.
And I just love the reason Blueblood's become one of my favorites is this and Best Night Ever. They both gave him this personality where he is this very pathetic guy, but he's also very intelligent and snarky. And able to own up to how terrible he is. And wants to be better, he just kind of sucks at it. And he just always ends up saying the exact wrong thing. And It's very well done. I actually really loved it. So, Sam, what do you got?
Okay, well, I went on a bit of a kick when I was trying to find some more adventure fics to read in preparation for this episode on Daring Do. Unfortunately, I found a few that I can't even really remember the names of because they were really short and not even much. There were a few longer ones that I'm planning on reading, but the best one that I ended up actually reading is probably Daring Do in the Eastern Star, which is it's very short and not all that amazing, but it got into her head pretty well. Like as a character, it did justice to Daring Do, I think, in many ways. So I mean that was fun. I've mentioned Fallout Equestria plenty on this, so I'm not going to bother talking too much about that. I'm still reading it; it's so long. There's one that I just started. I've only got a chapter in. The last little while has been crazy for me, getting ready to start a new job and all. But it's called Of Steam, Gears, and Wings, I believe. Allow me to find that title just to completely confirm.
Steampunk Ponies.
Yes.
It's on my read later list. I'll get around to it eventually.
Yeah, I found it and it looked interesting. It reminds me of, in tone, a little bit of the anime Last Exile, but I mean that I'm not too far in. But it seems pretty interesting so far. The one that I was one of the few fan fictions that I actually tried to read before I was co-hosting on here was I guess it'd probably be drama/adventure. Like it shifted to adventure partway through, called Estrella Noctis. I think that's Latin for Night Star or something like that. I don't know. My degree's in English, not Latin. But the concept was kind of interesting. It basically had to do with a pony coming into Ponyville, and his cutie mark had been burned off because apparently he'd been outcast from where he came from because his special ability was to make people empathize with him and care for him. And it got to the point where he had been accused of manipulating people that way. So he gets cast out, and when he shows up in Ponyville, everyone's being kind to him, but in his mind, that's just them being forced to. That's him unwittingly manipulating them into caring for him. And so it was this really interesting struggle, and I put it on hold for a little while at one point, and I remembered it when I was thinking of this. But I can't find it anymore, and that makes me really sad, because it was a great concept, and I thought it was rather well written. But I haven't been able to find it anymore. So I'm kind of hoping sad. That might pop up somewhere else again, but I don't know.
All right. And Uber?
Yes. Classic adventure stories.
Oh, yeah.
The one that comes to mind is called Dusk and Dawn by 2%. Does that count as adventure?
I don't know what it's about.
Okay, so the basic premise is it's an alternate universe where the events of the first episode happened a little bit differently. Where Twilight's friends weren't able to come to her aid because they couldn't find her. So Nightmare Moon basically kidnaps her and tortures her and turns her into her second in command.
Wow.
And so the other five pick up Trixie as a replacement element of magic. And
oh, boy.
What?
And so it's about the five of them plus Trixie facing off against Twilight.
That's interesting.
And it is amazingly well done, because it's actually told for the most part from Twilight's perspective as a loyal servant of Nightmare Moon.
Very interesting.
And it's really well done, and apparently there's a sequel I haven't read, which is actually really funny. When it first was posted on Equestria Daily, there's a bunch of people yelling for a sequel because they really wanted a sequel. And I thought that the original story on its own was perfect, that it didn't need a sequel because it already had touched on everything, and it was really a complete story on its own, and you could draw all the conclusions and tell what was going to happen. And I thought a sequel would just sort of tarnish that. So I made this post talking about how ending the author and saying I think he did a good job, and explaining sort of how I interpreted the ending and how I thought that meant it didn't need a sequel. The author responds to my post basically saying that I didn't interpret that correctly, and I completely misinterpreted the way the story ended. So that's an interesting way to hear from an author of a story that you like.
That's funny. Now, this is a podcast about fanfics, and this just occurred to me. I'm going to keep it short, because it's not a fanfic, but I'm going to name check here, My Little Pony, Friendship is Dragons, the amazing webcomic, that's out there. It's apparently an entire genre of webcomics out there now, it wasn't started by the trope maker here would be the DM of the Rings. But the trope codifier and the first good one would probably be Darths and Droids, which is still going and is fantastic. But it's a series of webcomics where you say, oh, this thing you like isn't actually this thing. It's these players playing a D&D game, and the plot is just them meandering through the story. And it's really interesting because you end up having the characters of the story and their players as usually their own characters, and it's really fun to see all the different ways they play with it. And Friendship is Dragons is amazing. It's a 4th edition game. My favorite thing of it being that Fluttershy and Twilight Sparkle's players are new and have never played before, but the difference being that Twilight Sparkle, she's never gamed before, but she has read the books inside and out because she's never had anyone to play with. So she's like a complete she's min-maxing without knowing that's a bad thing. Like, they look at her character like, whoa, your special talent is magic? And she's like, well, yeah, I mean, it gave the best bonuses and stuff. Why wouldn't I choose that? And, because she just doesn't understand how the culture works yet. And it's really interesting, like, these veteran players making them better at it. And the ending to the Nightmare and Moon storyline is brilliant, and it does. I think what always is great is this. Darths and Droids also did, where they basically said, "Oh, what actually happened? The DM had this entire other story they were going to do, and the players ruined it."
No, I read that comic. It's a really good comic. I particularly like the scene with Applejack proving herself as the element of honesty.
Oh, yeah.
The comic handled that better than the show.
Yeah,
I don't remember exactly how the comic did it.
Oh, yeah, I do. I was like, oh, you're the element of honesty. And she's like, well, most people would call that annoying, but I appreciate it. And they're like, that's because it is annoying.
No, what I was talking about.
Oh, that thing.
Was
on
when
the cliff.
when on the cliffside. And, alright, they're back in that. I'm going through the archives right now. Essentially, Applejack tells her to let go and trust that her friends will catch her. And that, alright,
the most riveting podcast of all.
The message being not trust me even though I'm not going to tell you why. It's trust your teammates.
Yeah.
That was really, they did do that better. All I could think of when I think of that scene is I'm like, Rarity fell and almost died, but then got a heal spell, so she was good. Okay, now we've gone to it. The moment I've been waiting for this entire podcast. The non-pony adventure fix.
Oh, right.
Oh, yes. Let me...
You're implying I have a part of my life that doesn't involve ponies.
I am. No. I think I hinted earlier, I am a huge Legend of Zelda dork. I love that series.
Seriously, readers, he has a Legend of Zelda and philosophy book.
I do.
And it's awesome.
That's a real book?
That's
yes,
a real book. So, my fic is one that's apparently started in 2003 and is still updating.
Dang.
That is The Legend of Zelda: The Return by Rose Zemula. And it is interesting, especially because I'm a huge dork, and it completely screws up the canon. It is so non-canon it hurts. Because it basically just goes, none of the games happen except Ocarina of Time. And its own alternate continuity from there. Which I'm okay with, because it was started being written in 2003, and there wasn't really a timeline at the time. So, basically, it goes from the child timeline, effectively. Except, for a reason they reveal later on, when Link is transported back to being a kid, he also has his mind wiped of that time. So, this whole other series of events happens, where he still becomes friends with Malon, he actually ends up, the big guy who runs the archery shop in Castletown? They give him a name and personality. He's Bruiser, and he lives and works at that guy's shop now. The guy pretty much adopts him, and that's where he spends the 7 years instead. And his other friend being Sheik. The problem being that Ganondorf's seal isn't that good, and Dark Link is after him, and with Link's blood, they'll be able to break the seal. So he's confused why this dark version of himself is trying to kill him with a sword while all of this is happening, and it is really well done. It's very long. I have to say, it's exceptionally long. And that's just the return. The updating part is its sequel, which is longer. The return is over 200,000 words. The reconciliation is still updating, is like 350,000 right now.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's huge. It's great. Probably my favorite parts being it really fleshes out the universe, which is something us pony people are new to our fandom. Especially the Gerudo and the Sheikah. I really like that they actually gave them, went so much into their culture. And actually, Sam may know this. You know how they allude with Link's backstory when it shows him as a baby. They mention that his mom was running from some war.
Right.
And that's all you hear about it. You just know that there was a war when Link was a child and his mom was running from it. That's all you know. They go so into that. They talk about this whole civil war that was happening, and it's really fantastic.
Oh.
It's a really great fic. I actually just started reading. I read it like over a year ago, and so I'm just now starting reading again, and it's just amazing me. I guess my other favorite part is that they give Link a voice without ruining Link, which is the hardest thing in the world to do.
Seriously.
And they just make him this really funny, intelligent, sarcastic guy, but who still is Link in that whenever a courage kind of thing happens, he is able to think of all of the more intelligent decisions, and he does, and then he just goes, no, screw that, I'm gonna do it my way. And he does it the dumb brave way, because that's just who Link is.
The element of courage.
He is the element of courage, yes.
Does he ever say, well, excuse me, Prince?
No!
No? Not once?
Not.
Corner! Corner! Out of here. Alright, so... Sam, do you have any non-pony adventures?
Not this time, no. So I always try and get some pony ones under my belt first, and as I said, this time has been busy, so...
Oh,
yeah.
Alright, Nick?
Well, the thing is, I don't actually read that much fan fiction. I kind of don't have a very high opinion of fan fiction, or didn't. That's actually been changing a little bit.
All thanks to ponies.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a miracle worker.
Celestia, thank you, ponies.
All right.
Yeah, no, I'm exactly the same way. I'd lost all faith in the concept of fan fiction until I kind of begrudgingly read some to help Roy out here, and then, wow, there's been some awesome stuff. I'm very impressed.
I win again.
Yes, thank you for that.
All right.
So, in that case, since I didn't get to earlier, can I mention there's a couple of fics that are pony-related, that are adventure stories that I think are really good.
Go ahead.
By all means.
They're actually both done by the same author.
Ooh.
But they're two completely different stories. The author is, he goes by Tri-Condon. And so one of these pops up in the featured bar almost every single time it updates. So, you might be familiar with it. It's a crossover with, Animorphs, the book series. Probably from your childhood. You ever?
I love Animorphs. Oh my god. I can almost claim to be the biggest Animorphs dork, except I hate the ending. But besides that, I love Animorphs.
I actually don't know the ending because I read them when I was in middle school, but I never got a chance to finish them. I got about halfway through. I need to finish them.
I didn't either until I got older. I recently went back. The ending is terrible. It's one of those kill 'em all endings. And
well, thank you for that spoiler.
Leg.
Not everyone. Okay, not everyone. Okay, wait. Actually, it's ambiguous to who survives. To several people, if they survive or don't. But it's a very depressing ending. It's like, yeah, we won, but sacrificed so many of us to do it. Yay.
You really need to do that well to pull it off at all.
Yeah. I did love the series, though. And a crossover of ponies is getting me excited now.
And it's really good. And so this was probably my one exception to what I said earlier about don't put humans in here. Because it's not a fusion fic. The idea is that the Yeerks decide to sort of pull off the invasion on Earth a little bit because they found another planet to invade.
And Sequestria.
Yeah, so that they think that the hosts on this other planet are much more able-bodied, much more powerful than
freaking unicorns.
humans.
Hell yeah.
Yes. And so the main characters of the Animorph series hijack a ship, but and try to follow them,
Nice.
and crash land in the Canterlot and just completely destroy the palace.
Oh.
So much for subtlety. And so everyone native there is running around trying to figure out what's going on because clearly something is going on.
Of course.
And they're in hiding. And they meet the main six, and they team up.
I gotta read this now.
It's still very much a work in progress, but it's definitely an adventure story. But it also has a lot of humorous moments. It has its own silliness and darkness. So the ability to balance those two and have them both work, I think, gives it a lot of points.
Definitely.
And
the other one by the same author.
The other one by the same author. It's called Darkness Embrace. It hasn't yet explained the actual meaning behind the title, but it's the basic premise is that Twilight wakes up in another world. It's kind of similar to the beginning of World Without Rainbows. Twilight wakes up in this darker world where they all lost and doesn't remember how history happened this time. She doesn't know what caused it to change, and she's wandering around trying to get used to her setting.
The only difference is this time we don't know how it changed either.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't say that's a difference. The exact
it took a little while
of what caused the split between the worlds in World Without Rainbows, that's something I definitely plan on focusing on in later chapters. It's not exactly as simple or clear-cut as it might seem.
No doubt. Okay. Nothing is in this one.
Yeah, that's definitely something I want to explore a bit more in detail with the upcoming updates, is exactly what is going on with this larger mythos and why the second world even exists in the first place. Because there's a reason for it.
Okay. All right, I'm definitely interested.
But yeah, Darkness Embrace is also really good. It's really dark. It's darker than most other stuff I've read. Fluttershy.
Yes.
I'm not going to go into detail.
Oh. Fluttershy.
I think Flutter. Okay. The reason that's pretty much guaranteeing is I'm just thinking of Fluttershy and your fic. I'm like, no, not that level, not all the time, not all the time.
No, I'll definitely be reading this one though. I'm taking a look at it. It's really interesting.
Sam, you read that and you tell me about it, and I'll learn about that way.
I certainly no. I'm not going to give you spoilers though. Spoilers are of Satan. You know this.
Dang it! All right. So, move on. I'm also very excited about this. For the first time in the history of the show, I have an email to read.
Oh, hey. I wonder how that happened.
This email is from Nathan Green. It says, "Hey there, I saw this little blurb about your interview with Coffee Grunt on the Roundup, and was very eager to hear the interview, seeing as he's one of my biggest influences for fanfic writing. However, the link says the file doesn't exist. You might want to check the file, or that you have the right link. I'd love to hear it, thanks." Yeah, I think that's just Rapid Share, or Meteor Share? I think it's Rapid Share. I believe it's, Rapid Share was just screwing with you. I've checked it on different computers. It's actually working. If you have that problem, check if you could just get to normal Rapid Share. I don't think it's us. It might be the Roundup page, but I don't think it is, because we have a ton of downloads on that episode. So, if you would like to have your email read on the show, or if you'd like to give us a comment, question, concern, criticism, or would you like to help us, send it to the Brony Bookclub at gmail.com. So, that is it for this week. Next week, I'm actually not sure which we're going to. I think we're going to do Slice of Life next week. So, it has been fun.
Yeah, it's been great.
It's been... Oh, okay. All right.
Thanks for having me, by the way.
Huh?
Thanks for having me.
Dude, it's no problem. It was great to have you on.
Yeah, it really was.
Indeed. So, that's it for this week. Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.